In the world of cyberpunk, Johnny Silverhand is a central character. He's an influential rocker boy and the lead singer of the band Samurai before their breakup in 2008. In Cyberpunk 2077, Johnny Silverhand will act as V's guide to Night City and will be with him or her for most of the game. Johnny is a digital ghost that haunts V, trying to push his agenda on them. His dedication and ambition is what keeps him going, but at the end of the day, he doesn't care much for people around him, seeing V as really just being a method for him to accomplish his goals. But who is Johnny Silverhand? Originally born as Robert John Linder in 1988, he is a very well-known influential artist in America. He was the lead singer of a band called Samurai, and one of the more prominent figures in the fight against the corrupt US and mega-corporate governments. Johnny focuses a lot of his anger on a particular corporation called Arasaka, mainly because his girlfriend was kidnapped, leading to her alleged death by this corporation. He is known to be very charismatic and quite a charmer, but Johnny has a dark side also. He has quite a temper and seems to be constantly on edge, possibly due to his history in the Central American conflict. Johnny is also known to be irrational, impulsive, and a manipulator, often being described as a terrorist. The Central American conflict was a name given to a devastating war ran by a corrupt and manipulative government in the 2000s. After the true nature of the conflict became known, many of the American soldiers stopped supporting the war and began deserting the military. The American government propaganda machine kicked in, pushing their narrative and turning public opinion against those that deserted the war. Johnny was one of these men. He lost his arm in the conflict and returned to Night City a deserter, trying to start a new life for himself under the name Johnny Silverhand. But the war had made a huge impact on Johnny and would define him for the rest of his life. He wanted to expose the corruption to the world and decided to do this by starting a band. He joined forces with his friend Kerry Eurodyne and formed a legendary band known as Samurai. They started out just playing backstreet clubs around Night City, but in 2003, while playing in a bar called the Rainbow Cadenza, they were spotted by a producer by the name of Jack Masters, who promptly signed them to Universal Recording label. The band was made up of 5 members. Johnny and Kerry were both lead singers and guitarists. The name of the drummer was Denny, you had Nancy on keyboard, and then you had Henry on bass. This music would become revolutionary, becoming an overnight sensation and starting the rocker boy movement. Within 3 weeks, the band had a record in production and were preparing to tour every major city in the world. It took Samurai only 3 weeks to achieve their first #1 hit on the Euro radio charts with their single Blistering Love, followed by their debut album 2 weeks later. Despite their success, the band split up in 2008. This was because their keyboard player, Nancy, was in an abusive relationship at the time, and after hitting her breaking point, she threw her boyfriend from her 83rd floor of their apartment. She was arrested and sentenced to 7 months in prison. Although the band firmly supported Nancy, this 7-month downtime from the band would see each of the band members going in their own creative directions. Henry, who was the bass player, went on to work on a human interface prototype. Unfortunately, an accident fried his brain and he ended up having to rebuild his mind. The drummer, Denny, joined a band called Mastermind. Nancy changed her name to Bez Isis and later became a major media presence on the Network 54. Johnny Silverhand and Kerry Eurodyne went on to have successful solo careers, often touring together as a double act ticket. Johnny Silverhand remained to be one of the most popular musicians of the time. He continued to use his star power to push his anti-corporation and anti-government message. A music label by the name of DBS Music wanted to sign him so much that they actually resorted to blackmailing him, threatening to reveal his true identity as a deserter of the Central American conflict. Johnny, being Johnny decided to sign with Universal Music again instead, and released an entire album called Sins of Your Brothers, admitting that he was a deserter and revealing all the terrible things that the government had ordered. This album was wildly successful, and actually ended up changing the perception of what it meant to be a deserter. After a concert in 2013, Johnny and his girlfriend, Alt Cunningham, were on a walk, when suddenly gangsters came out of nowhere and kidnapped Alt. It turns out these gangsters were hired by the mega corporation Arasaka. Alt is described as a beautiful and talented netrunner. The head of Arasaka at the time, Toshiro, wanted her to develop a software called Soulkiller that would allow them to download any netrunner's mind. She had previously developed this for her employer ITS, and she knew it was a dangerous software that could kill anyone whose brain that they wanted. Johnny was determined to get her back, and he put in place a plan and called in some favors from his old band members. Samurai got together and performed an entirely free show right outside the Arasaka Tower in Night City. Johnny started a riot with his legion of fans right outside the complex. Fearing the worst, Toshiro used the software on Alt, but before he was successful, she managed to fend off the attack, killing the Arasaka Netrunner team and incapacitating Toshiro's bodyguard, Akira. During Johnny's assault, he detonated an explosive charge. This gave Toshiro a chance to disconnect Alt from her body. Johnny killed Toshiro and left with Alt's lifeless body. He didn't understand that Alt's consciousness still exists in digital form, and left it behind. Years later, Johnny would learn of this digital consciousness, and in 2023, Johnny teamed up with some legendary solos by the name of Rogue, Morgan Blackhand, Shaitan, Thompson, and Spider Murphy. They led a Militech assault team onto the Arasaka American HQ, which was based in Night City. The main intention of this was to end the Fourth Corporate War by destroying the tower with a mini-nuke. Of course, Johnny had another reason for going back into the Arasaka Tower. He wanted to find Alt Cunningham, but there were more than a few obstacles there waiting for him when he got there. The biggest was a Borg by the name of Atom Smasher. Atom Smasher was a ruthless solo who got on the wrong side of an RPG blast and was given the option by Arasaka to either pull the plug or become a full-body cyborg. He decided to become more of a machine than a man, and has no empathy for anybody. But since Arasaka kept him alive, he still works for them, killing enemies of the corporation. He is a true force to be reckoned with. On this night in the Arasaka Tower, he proved too much for Johnny, and Johnny was presumed dead, gunned down by Atom Smasher. His body was never found though, because the mini-nuke dropped in the Arasaka building left very little remains in the aftermath. Johnny's memory still lives on in Night City though, and even decades later, you'll still see graffiti throughout the city that just says, "Where's Johnny?" We know that Johnny Silverhand's consciousness still lives on in digital form, and is a key plot point in the story of Cyberpunk 2077, but there's still a lot of mystery about what is going on with Johnny Silverhand. Does he have his own agenda? What is his agenda? Is he there to help V, or is he there to use V? Personally, I can't wait to find out. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this, so please let me know your opinions in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, of course, why not consider subscribing? This channel is all things Cyberpunk. That's it, people. I'll see you all in Night City.